I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember, bacon makes everything better.
Wild Dogs and Hogs here on the North Carolina Sports Network, talking college football with teams in the Old North State. That's the coach, Jim Collins. I am Mike Waddell, and coach, in the first quarter this week, it's Tar Heels and Tigers. In the second quarter, Hokies and Wolfpack. In the third quarter, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to go back through your career and talk about rivalry games and some crazy things that have happened in those as we head into rivalry weekend. And then in the fourth quarter, we'll come back and talk somber topics. We're talking about the first ACC coach to feel the axe of change, and that would be Dino Babers of Syracuse. But back to another shade of orange, the Death Valley type, and North Carolina's very tough loss in South Carolina this past weekend. Final score in that one, 31-20. The tough thing about that is North Carolina finishes with 20 points, but they should have had 21 points in the first half. That's got to be very debilitating now for North Carolina to have to shake that off and come back against NC State, a high emotion game here in rivalry week.
Well, there's no doubt. You know, the game that we play this day and time is all about the emotion, and it's all about being able to create things as you move into, and it's all about momentum. And all of a sudden, Carolina is playing really, really well and creating momentum in the game. And then they have two turnovers, and all of a sudden Clemson is in the game and able to make plays. And that's a tough situation. Playing on the road, let me say this, Mike, the Clemson University right now, over Dabo's career at Clemson as the head football coach, they are 96-9. So to think that you're going to go to Clemson and win, you've got to play really, really well, and you got to play mistake-free, because it's a tough place to play, and they execute, and they're physical, and they do all the things that it takes to win games.
North Carolina on the ground seemingly doing what you need to win games. Usually when you have a guy go for 2 touchdowns and 179 yards, you're winning the football game. Drake May, an anemic performance, 16 of 36, a touchdown, a pick, 209 yards. Only 30 more yards off Drake May's first pick in the NFL draft, perhaps arm, than on the legs of Omarion Hampton. What's wrong with Drake May, or is there anything wrong with Drake May? It just seems like the Carolina offense is just not on the field enough these days. 20 plays fewer than Clemson on Saturday.
Well, my numbers may be off a little bit, but if I remember correctly, the Clemson had the ball for 38 minutes plus. Right. North Carolina had the ball for 21 minutes. When your offense doesn't stay on the field, it's a problem. There creates fatigue on your defense at that point in time. It puts them in stressful situations. It's tough to throw the football with constant pressure, and you're being hit on almost every throw that you make. So I don't blame Drake May. I blame the protection. You got to protect the guy. The guy's got to have time to throw the ball. He's a creative quarterback. He creates more plays than any quarterback that I've been around in a long, long time. And let's face it, Mike, I've been around some pretty good ones. I've been around Heisman Trophy winners and players of the year, et cetera. And I've seen a lot of good football players in this career. Drake May is as good as anybody out there, but it's tough to throw. It's tough to throw it vertically when somebody's hitting you in the back all the time. Now, that's almost opposite of what you would think about the University of North Carolina, because they rushed for 260 yards plus in the game.
Right.
They struggled in protection, but their rushing game was great. So, it's tough. I mean, Clemson's really good on defense, really good pass rushers. They make good decisions, and their defensive staff does a hell of a job, no doubt about it.
North Carolina in Mac Brown 2.0 has already gone through a change at offensive coordinator, a change at defensive coordinator. But I would contend, I'd love to get your opinion on this, that the most important position on a football staff in 2023, it's been like this for a while, is the strength and conditioning coordinator, because they spend so much time with the young people in season, out of season. They're the ones that are truly charged with getting that emotional center pointed towards a due north for a football program. And if you look at it, over Mac Brown's second stint in North Carolina, in the second half of the season, the Tar Heels are only 3 games over 500, and they lack any memorable win in that time period. When the going gets tough, it seems like the Tar Heels just don't have the energy. And again, on Saturday night, you see this. Now, they had big wins in overtime against Appalachian State and Duke this year, but Appalachian State and Duke aren't the type of teams that you need to be crowing about beating if you're North Carolina and you want to be contending for an ACC championship. Tough times right now in the late stages of games for the Tar Heels.
Well, let me say this, Mike. I've had the opportunity to be around some very, very good strength coaches and conditioning coaches, and I'm not making an evaluation of anybody in this business, but all I can say is that is the most critical guy within your program. I mean, obviously the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, all the coaches are important. The general manager, as they call him, for managing your roster, everybody's important in what you do right now. But that guy, the strength coach and the conditioning coach, manages your team as much as anybody that touches these players this day and time. So to create toughness, to create quickness, to create speed, to create strength, that guy, that all falls on his shoulders. So that's a tremendous amount of pressure on that guy, and you got to make sure that you have the right guy. I'm not saying that North Carolina State, Duke, or anybody doesn't have the right guy, but you've got to have the right guy to manage your roster in the offseason.
When I was around the North Carolina football program back in Mac's first stint in Chapel Hill, they had 2 guys, Jeff Madden and George Smith, Mad Dog and Bulldog. And these guys were attitude personified, and it carried over to the guys on the field. I was on the sidelines at Clemson on Saturday. I just don't get that feeling from this North Carolina team, this attitude that they're going to go out and take things away. It doesn't mean that there aren't players that have that attitude. I'm talking about team-wide. When they ran out of the tunnel on Saturday, it's like they already knew that Louisville had won their game. They already knew that they had no pathway to the ACC championship. I don't think that's an excuse. That's just the reality. When you know your goal is no longer, that just deflates you. And you hope for Carolina's standpoint that they will be able to shake that off and wake it up coming into Carter Finley Stadium on Saturday night, because an 8:00 game at Carter Finley Stadium, the North Carolina-NC State rivalry, that has the potential to be about 100 proof. And I mean that literally. I mean, that parking lot is going to be a crazy place before the game, because it gets dark. You're going to be in the dark for 2.5 hours tailgating before you roll in to Carter Finley, and it's going to be lit. You were there 2 years ago. You know what it was like.
Yeah, almost 3 hours. I've been in that atmosphere, and let me say this, Mike. I've had the opportunity to be around some really, really fine strength coaches, from Jerry Smith to Rich Tootin to Rob Glass. Rob Glass is at Oklahoma State right now. Rob Glass is the highest paid strength coach in this country right now. So, I'm not being critical of anybody. All I'm doing is telling you how critical that guy is to what you do, because he touches your team more than any assistant coach on your staff touches your team. And he creates the atmosphere, whether it's a level of toughness or whatever you're searching for within your team and what you're looking for. So that guy's a very critical guy in building a program and building a team. Will the parking lot be loaded with beer drinkers and barbecue eaters on Saturday night? Yeah, absolutely. And it'll probably be dark at 5:00. So by 8 o'clock now, it'll be interesting. That's a tough atmosphere. I've been in the SEC. I was in the SEC for 12 years. I mean, I've been to Mississippi State, I've been to Auburn, I've been to Alabama, I've been to all those places. North Carolina State has a really good atmosphere for a stadium that only seats around 60,000. It's a really good atmosphere, especially playing the rival from 25 miles away. So it'll be a great atmosphere on Saturday night.
Our Old North State tailgate and traveling sports circus will be at the Backyard Bistro from 5:30 until 7:30 on Saturday. So come on out, hang with David Glenn, myself. You never know what's going to go on there. We'll have some fun throwing the football around, telling stories, and get ready for the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels. When we come back, it's the second quarter, and we'll talk about the home team for this coming week, NC State, and their big road victory in Blacksburg over the Hokies. NC State 8-3 on the upswing as we head into rivalry week, and we'll come back with more right here on Wild Dogs and Hogs after this on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Hey folks, David Glenn here. I cannot offer a greater endorsement or a bigger compliment than telling you about the folks that I use for important matters in my own life. That's the case with the Lawson Insurance Group, led by three actual brothers, Ken Lawson, Miller Lawson, and Michael Lawson. These guys operate a very successful family-oriented business right here in Raleigh, and that office happens to be one of those beautiful blends of NC State grads and UNC grads and graduates, fans and supporters of other colleges and universities all over North Carolina. I know these guys, I trust these guys, and I send these guys my own insurance business and that of my family. The next time you have insurance needs, I hope you'll do the same. The Lawson Insurance Group is known for its commitment to community and its dedication to ensuring that North Carolinians and their businesses are prepared for life's inevitable challenges, with the reminder that as a high street insurance partner, Lawson Insurance Group offers local expertise and support that, combined with High Street's extensive national resources, means more choice and support for you as their client. As we speak, Miller Lawson's helping the Glenn family with our auto insurance needs, and Ken Lawson is the guy to call for your commercial insurance needs. If you Google High Street Lawson Insurance, their website will be the first to pop up. In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
It's the second quarter on Wild Dogs and Hogs. Jim Collins along with me, Mike Waddell, and we're talking Wolfpack and Hokies from last week. Big 35-28 win over Virginia Tech, or you might just want to call it the Brennan Armstrong Show. 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 touchdowns in the air. I was reading something on social media this week. It had a fake little form in there that said, "We're sorry, Brennan Armstrong. Thank you very much," signed Wolfpack fans, and it said it should be guaranteed for every fan to turn that in on social media, and I guess in virtual sense, to Brennan Armstrong to get admission to Carter Finley on Saturday night. I tell you, this kid has to be one of the comeback stories of the year in college football, Brennan Armstrong.
You know, Mike, I have actually been shocked at the year that Brennan Armstrong has had at North Carolina State. Because when he was at the University of Virginia, you realize now that 2 years ago, he threw for almost 500 yards against the Tar Heels in Kenan Stadium. A tremendous game. And I thought he was one of the top 5, 6 quarterbacks in this country coming into the game. And so I have a great deal of respect. And I listened earlier to Coach Brown's press conference today as the lead into the North Carolina State game. And he has a great deal of respect for this guy also. This guy's a playmaker now. He can run it, he can throw it, he can do a lot of different things. And you know what? He has linebacker toughness. And I'm going to back up for a second. He has wild dog toughness. I like Brennan Armstrong. But the interesting thing is we're in a great time of ACC football on Tobacco Road. I'm going to use an old term with Tobacco Road because the NC State's 8-3, North Carolina's 8-3. Duke has fought their butt off to be 6-5 at this point, losing their quarterback earlier in the year. But Mike Elko has done a hell of a job there. Speaking of that, Mike Elko is still in the rumor mill for the Texas A&M job at this point in time. And I hope for Duke's sake that Mike stays at Duke and continues to do that job. But we've got winning programs throughout the triangle at this point in time. So it makes it even more exciting. And I've had the opportunity, and I know we're going to talk about this later in the third and the fourth quarter about rivalry games. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a lot of rivalry games, and this one's pretty special now. So the atmosphere will be electric, and there will be lots and lots of red and white in that stadium on Saturday night.
That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. When we come back here on Wild Dogs and Hogs, we're going to talk about Rivalry Week and go back. We're going to talk about Rivalry Week and go back through some of the great memories that Coach has of his time in the SEC and the ACC. We'll talk about that next right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Hey folks, David Glenn right here in Raleigh. One of my favorite restaurants for many years has been The Oak Scratch Kitchen and Bourbon Bar. It's located on Lake Boone Trail, which happens to be a perfect location for a great meal and beverage if you're on your way to nearby Carter Finley Stadium or perhaps PNC Arena for a concert, Wolfpack or Hurricanes game, or other event. The menu is incredibly tasty and creative. The atmosphere is a lot of fun. The bourbon options are as high-end and varied as you'll find anywhere. The staff is super classy and first-rate, and I've just always loved the people, the food, and the overall vibe there. When I took Carolina Hurricanes owner Tom Dundon to lunch, yes, meaning the billionaire who owns the hockey team, I took him to The Oak. Seriously, it's that good. Learn more or make a reservation by visiting their website, theoakraleigh.com. That's theoakraleigh.com. Special thanks to Nick and Haley and their team for joining the family here at the David Glenn Show and the new North Carolina Sports Network.
Sport Clips is like no other place you've ever gotten your haircut. Sports everywhere, TVs everywhere, playing sports, and guys, smart stylists who know how to give you the haircut you want and the haircut you need. You don't ever need an appointment. Walk-ins are welcome, and you'll walk out feeling like an MVP, guaranteed. Be sure to ask about the MVP experience, as it's something you just can't put into words. Awesome haircut, hot steam towel, invigorating shampoo, neck and shoulder treatment. It takes a haircut and turns it into an event. Sport Clips, a proud partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
It's time for the third quarter here on Wild Dogs and Hogs. Mike Waddell along with the coach, Jim Collins. And so you've been in a lot of great rivalries. This Carolina-NC State rivalry, the last two seasons, Carolina and Duke for a long time as well, along with Georgia, Florida, and Florida, Tennessee. What are some of the great stories that you have from your rivalry past?
Well, Mike, let me say this now. And as we trace back through the history of this, obviously the Duke Carolina rivalry, the Duke NC State rivalry was a big one. The North Carolina and North Carolina State rivalry. But you know what? When I was at Duke, one of the biggest rivalries was Duke Wake Forest. Because they're very similar schools. And then we traveled down the road to the University of Florida. You know, you got Florida, Georgia. You got Florida, Tennessee in the 90s when we were there. Then you've got Florida State. Because as you trace through the history of the 90s and the early 2000s, when Coach Spurrier and our staff, we were at the University of Florida, Florida State was pretty damn good, and so were we. And that game became a very big game. And I'll take you back to the to the 1996, I guess it was the 97 Sugar Bowl, but it was for the 1996 National Championship. I was at the University of Florida, and we played Florida State in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship. We won, because I'm bringing it up. We won 52-20 against Florida State. But the interesting part of that is they had beaten us in the regular season. We played them 12 times in the regular season, them meaning Florida State, and we never won in Doak Campbell Stadium. So to say that Florida State and playing in Doak Campbell was a tough place to play would be an understatement, because we didn't lose to very many people. We won 126 games in 12 years. So to say that we were pretty successful would be an understatement. But rivalry games are so much fun. I mean, this is the highlight of college football. This is college football. Whether it's Duke, North Carolina, whether it's North Carolina State, Clemson, South Carolina, and one of the biggest in this country right now is what? Ohio State, Michigan, and then Auburn, Alabama. I mean, this is rivalry week. What a great week of college football we have coming to us right now.
How big of an advantage for Ohio State is it this weekend as they play the Wolverines to not have Jim Harbaugh on the Michigan sideline?
I don't think it makes one bit of difference, because Jim Harbaugh is at practice every single day this week. He's in all the meetings. He's just as involved as he ever is. He will go on. He will have meetings with his assistant coaches. They will understand what he expects of them to do on Saturday. There will be a plan. And I'm gonna do a little bit of analogy here, Mike. Okay, and maybe some of our fans will understand this, others will not. It's like in NASCAR racing, when your crew chief is suspended and he can't be at the race. I think it's very similar to Jim Harbaugh being suspended and can't be at the game. Jim Harbaugh is still making the decisions. I don't care what anybody says. The guy makes multi-millions of dollars a year. He's not going to let Sharon Moore make all the decisions. He's made them all. He's prepped him to do this at this point in time.
It will be a fascinating thing to watch. The Ohio State-Michigan game, North Carolina State. My favorite rivalry game is Army-Navy. So I still have a couple of weeks to get my Black Knights of the Hudson ready to dismantle the Goats again. A very, very important rivalry to me. I can't imagine losing to Navy. I mean, it's abhorrent to me, because in that rivalry, you never say go Army without saying beat Navy. I've never experienced anything close to that as a player, as an administrator, or even as a broadcaster. Not that that's really a thing that you experience, but you get caught up in the hype and all that. But it is fun. And like you say, it's the emotion that makes college football better, in my mind, than pro football.
No, there's no doubt. And Mike, you bring up the probably the ultimate rivalry in college football, and that's the Army-Navy game. I have a former player that I recruited and played for me for 4 years, and was actually there for 5 years at the University of Florida because he redshirted. He coaches at Army, and for him to say that this is the greatest spectacle that he's ever been a part of, and he played in the Florida-Georgia game, he played in the Florida State game, he played in all those games. And then I have another friend that is the D-line coach at Army, and he says, Jim, it is an unbelievable spectacle. So I actually envy those guys that they've had the opportunity to play in that game. Army-Navy, to me, in this day and time, is the ultimate college football rivalry. Because let's face it, there's not NIL money involved. There's not national championship involved. There's not all these outside factors that are involved in the game. Guess what's involved? The only thing that's involved in the game is pride and the ability to say that I played at Army, I played at Navy, and I kicked Army's ass or I kicked Navy's ass. That's what's on the line. That's old school college football.
Jimmy, the best way I can describe it is imagine your favorite players that you ever coached. Now multiply them by 100, and that's your entire team.
No doubt. Because guess what? They're not going to go play in the NFL. There's maybe a few of them will, but they're playing for the pride of their country, and they're playing for the pride of their academy. That's the way college football used to be. College football in general right now is not about all of that. It's completely different. But that game is all about the pride of your school.
We're talking rivalries right here on Wild Dogs and Hogs. That's the end of our third quarter. Now we'll turn the page to a not so fun topic to talk about, and that's the coaching silly season. And already one ACC coach is without employment. We're talking about Dino Babers of Syracuse. We'll get to the coaching carousel right after this as you're tuned in to Wild Dogs and Hogs all across the Old North State on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Hey folks, David Glenn here for Organize for Success. I am a better person and a more effective business owner for having known and learned from Emily Parks over many years now. Emily's company, Organize for Success, helps multi-passionate business owners and executives bring harmony to all the layers of their lives, from work to side projects, from friends and family to hobbies, community, and beyond. With Emily's help, you too can make every minute matter. She helps you determine what earns your time and how to efficiently accomplish what matters. One of the many things I love about Emily is that she doesn't impose her will on her clients. She listens to them. That way she can better help them cultivate the lives they want to live. You can set up a complimentary call with Emily today by visiting organizeforsuccess.com. That's organize, F-O-R, success.com.
The original Saltworks has been serving the Wilmington area for over 50 years. Owner Bob Hubbard and his staff create a welcome atmosphere to go along with their home-cooked breakfast and lunch that simply cannot be rivaled anywhere in North Carolina. Eggs, waffles, hot dogs, crab cakes, and the best grits in the state. The original Saltworks, a proud partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
The fourth quarter now here on Wild Dogs and Hogs on the North Carolina Sports Network. Mike Waddell along with the coach Jim Collins. And coach, it is silly season with the first axe falling down on an ACC head coach. Dino Babers now dismissed at Syracuse University after going 41-55 in his tenure as the head coach of the Orange. He was a pretty strong candidate coming into Syracuse after 2 years at Eastern Illinois and a couple of great years in the Mid-American Conference at Bowling Green. What went wrong for Dino Babers at Syracuse?
You know, Mike, Syracuse in upstate New York is a difficult place to recruit, to compete against. And let's face it, we're all better coaches with really, really good players. And I'm sure, I don't know Dino, but I know that the coaches that he's had on his staff and all, they're good football coaches and they've done a nice job. But we're all better coaches with really good players. And upstate New York, I've been to Syracuse. I've played games in the Dome there. It's a great place. It's a nice place to play and all that stuff. But it's hard to recruit there. I know when George DeLeon as the assistant coach and Paul Pasqualoni as the head coach, they did a great job, not a good job, but a great job for recruiting the Northeast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a tough job. It's a challenge to win there, and especially when you got to play all these teams down south. And let's face it, football down south is pretty darn good. and we take our football down here pretty darn serious. So it's a challenging job. I'll say that.
One of the names being mentioned for the Syracuse head coaching job is a former guest here on Wild Dogs and Hogs. We're talking about Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, this week he's getting ready for Michigan, but this week he's getting ready for Michigan. But Jim Knowles will have to start thinking about Syracuse if he wants to be a candidate for that job soon after the end of the Buckeyes and the Wolverines on Saturday. Would you think that it's better being the defensive coordinator at Ohio State or the head coach at Syracuse?
I don't think there's any doubt. You have to the opportunities to be a head coach are so few and far between. If you get the opportunity to be the head coach at a Power 5 school, you have to take that opportunity. And to be honest with you, I think Jim would be a great choice because Jim is a Philadelphia native. He has lots and lots of contacts in the Philadelphia, New Jersey, and New York area, and he's done a great job recruiting that area, both at Duke and Ohio State. So I think he would be a tremendous choice for them just because of his connections. And Jim's a hell of a good football coach too. So I think that'd be a great choice.
It should be a lot of fun to watch how that one shakes out. The only vacancy so far and the only one expected here in the Atlantic Coast Conference in the 2023 silly season. If you were an athletics director, what would you look for in a head coach? What would be those top qualities that you would seek out in the new leader of your football program?
Well, I'm searching for a CEO in this climate that we're in college football right now. You have to have somebody that has the ability to manage the roster along with what we're calling this day and time with the general managers. There are general managers in college football, just like they are in the NFL. Are you going to make the decision at this point in time? Are you going to make a living in free agency, which is the transfer portal? Or are you going to make a living in the draft, which is high school recruiting? Are you going to make a living somewhere in between the two of those, the draft and the transfer portal or college, high school recruiting? So I think it's very important that you have a guy that can manage the roster and understand and manage. Once you develop the roster, you have to have somebody that can manage the locker room and can cultivate the locker room and can build the program from that point in time. Obviously, I think it takes a real CEO right now. I think it's very difficult, Mike, to be the head coach and be, whether it's the defensive play caller or the offensive play caller. I think it's extremely difficult because there's so many other things out there that you have to do this day and time.
It's a tricky mix out there. I can tell you that every football coaching search that I've ever been involved with has involved down the line that coach winning a championship. And we look for exactly what you're talking about, somebody who's a geographical fit, somebody who understood and had worked at a similar institution compared to the one we were hiring into. We didn't want somebody, it'd be very tough to get somebody who had only worked at the Power 5 level and then to hire them and expect them to be able to excel at the FCS level because they're just used to so many different things that are support mechanisms. But I had no problem elevating somebody up. And both times we hired coaches at the University of Cincinnati, both Brian Kelly and Butch Jones, they came from the Mid-American Conference, same geographical area where you were recruiting to, similar styles because we had already built up a roster of Brian's type of players. We wanted to have somebody that would come in and not want to flip and go to a run-based offense after we had gone to a real passing attack and vice versa on defense. So it all is about the fit. And it's still tough because you have a lot of people who want to have a say-so in the hire. You don't have as many people who want to be involved when it comes time to making changes later on. So it's a very tenuous spot if you're a director of athletics, just like it is if you're a coach trying to evaluate if this is someplace that you want to take your family to and lay their security on the line for the next few years. It's a tough beat Indeed. What do you think about Jim Knowles? Do you think he'll be a head coach again soon?
Well, I think Jim Knowles will be a great head coach because Jim has his feet on the ground. He understands how to play defense. He understands the importance of special teams and the importance of offense. I think he'd do a tremendous job. I mean, he was the head coach at Cornell. I mean, that's hard. You know, being the head coach at Cornell, you're competing against Harvard and Dartmouth and all those people in that league. That's tough. I think Jim would be a great answer, and not just because Jim is a friend and we've had him on the show. Here's a guy has #1 defense in the country right now. So he's taken good players and coached them pretty damn good right now at this point in time.
Okay, we got to get your picks, Jimmy. Rivalry week. We'll start off with that game, Ohio State and Michigan. Who do you like in this one?
Well, I can't go against my partner now. Okay. I got to go. I got to go with the Buckeyes at this point in time.
My favorite rivalry week game, Appalachian State and Georgia Southern. You know.
I got to go.
We haven't talked about my Mountaineers.
I got to go with Mountaineers.
Taking out those James Madison Dukes. See you, Dukes.
Mountaineers, no doubt.
But Sean Clark and the Mountaineers have a chance to play for a Sun Belt title if they get the win in Boone this week on Senior Day against their villainous rivals from Statesboro. Who do you like in this one?
Well, I've got to pull for the Mountaineers. Obviously, I have back a long way back in my career. I was a Mountaineer and lived in that area and coached at App State. So I like the Mountaineers, not only because of my background with them, but because I think they're the better team.
North Carolina State and North Carolina, 8 o'clock on the ACC network from Carter Finley Stadium, the Tar Heels and the Wolfpack. What say ye, Coach Collins?
Well, I think it's a tough matchup. I have to say that I favor the Wolfpack at home because it'll be a tough atmosphere to play in, and it will all come down to how well the North Carolina State defense plays and how well the North Carolina defense plays.
I'm going with the Wolfpack. I'm going with the Wolfpack plus 10. I think this one will not be a game down the last 5 to 8 minutes, and it's going to be a very raucous crowd.
Last 2 years have come down to the last plays of the game and overtime. So, and I think this one will also. So it could be a real toss-up at this point.
Well, regardless of how the games come out, Jimmy, I want to tell you I'm very thankful in this week of Thanksgiving for you and your friendship and our season that we've had here on the North Carolina Sports Network with Wild Dogs and Hogs, and look forward to coming back and having a nice bowl preview show down the line. I wish you and Yvonne and all of the Collins family a very blessed Thanksgiving. And again, thank you for all you do for me and for being my friend.
Mike, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm thankful for a very long career in the business of college and pro football, but most of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be on this show with you because it's kept me involved in the game of college football and the enjoyment of what we do in this game. But the great thing is I've stayed involved, but I don't have to spend 12 to 14 hours a day in the office. So it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
And you get to play golf on game days like you did last Saturday.
Exactly. No doubt.
That's awesome. That's Jimmy Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. We'll be back with our bowl preview show here in a couple of weeks. Until then, you stay tuned right here to all of our programming on the North Carolina Sports Network. So long.